Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sourcing and Design Conclave at Images Fashion Forum 2006 at the India Fashion Forum 2016. Our panel will focus on creating the soul of fashion in a new millennium. In today's changed and ever-changing fashion world, the brands that can introduce new products and designs faster and retailers that can get them out of the market faster will have an edge over the rest. While individual brands and retailers will try to retain their competitive advantage, how can we as an industry come together to build on collective intelligence and design sensibilities which make Indian products world-class in quality, cost-effective in sourcing, and competitive in pricing? Let's meet our experts who will take us through this conclave. Our moderator is Group Head Product Development, Madhura Fashion and Lifestyle. Let's hear it for Prem Sadhwani. Co-founder and Creative Director, Style Vision Paris, Agnes Kubiak. Senior Editor, Street Style and Trend Specialist, WGSN, based in Hong Kong, Anupreet Pui. Head of Operations, Triumph International, Jennifer Kapasi. Director Product, Raymond, Kishore Bhatia. Vice President Head of Design, MFB, Mintra Designs, Nihal Rajan. General Manager, Buying, Merchandising and Sourcing, Lifestyle Retailing Business, Sudhir Gupta. Head, Product Finance and SCM, Roosh, Vinesh Singh. General Manager, Alberto Terrero, Varun Sharma. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's over to Mr. Prem Sadhwani to guide us through this conclave. Over to you, sir.
Hi, clearly into the direction. And what I can promise you, friends, is that I've had a discussion with this group just before getting into this session, which was like a 30-40 minutes discussion. I can tell you, these guys are all set ready with their ideas on what they want to share here today and what we want to conclude into this discussion. So getting into the straight into this discussion here, we're trying to talk about 2 points. We're talking about new products coming out every couple of weeks. That was one point which we looked at, which was mentioned on this. And second, we looked at how important it is for a brand and retailer to keep doing it. So we have different perspectives here from different value chain, the way how the fashion evolves, starting from the trends and the styles. So starting with, maybe with Anupreet, you want to put in your thoughts onto this subject. What are your thoughts into this thing? Basically, the way how you globally put on the trends together and how does this impact the local market? Because a lot of trends are done globally. And one of the debate point was that how do you make sure that you pick the trends in the right way for the local market, for the right consumer base?
Yeah. Thank you, Prem. So just prior to having this, final discussion over here, we were just in the background sort of, trying to get our heads together, and where, Sir very rightfully mentioned that where does change stop and how do you actually know that, when is the right time that you're picking up a noise versus a signal that you should be picking up. So coming from WGSN, and we are, as you all are familiar, one of the leading trend forecasting websites, and we actually get in really ahead of the season and start with how the consumer is changing and evolving, how their lifestyles are changing and evolving. We look at art, architecture, design, and all aspects of, technology, and then filter that information and sort of get back into mega trends and vision on how that can actually influence fashion. So we do that more from a global perspective, and then coming back to how that can affect India is something that I would say would depend on your individual brand and on your individual brand perspective and point of view. As a trend forecasting website, our mission is always to keep informing you of all that is happening around the world, globally, in your country. And then I would just like to emphasize that, bringing that, we could also mention it to you in a way that, we are bringing you the ingredients, and then how you cook and what you cook from that ingredient is something that is going to be relevant for your brand.
And thank you very much. So Agnes, just to continue with that part where we're moving on to the style and the direction. So it's easy to say that you want to bring in new products every couple of weeks. but I can imagine the amount of time which goes in to do this trend direction and styling, which the whole amount of research work which goes into that direction. So can you just help us understand that? What's the sort of approach and process and the time taken to it, so that this new ideas can evolve into that direction, basically, so that it can be understood?
About the changes, but in fact it's not so easy, but what we can make it easy. It means we can prepare, when you are preparing a collection, we need to anticipate. And anticipation in fashion means we need to prepare everything carefully before producing the collection, and then to provide something new in the shop every 2 weeks, for instance. It's just a question of implementation. But as everything is preparing before, it's why it sounds to be easy to do. But what is sure, when you put something new in your shop every 2 weeks, you can attract the consumer every 2 weeks and give the impression that your collection is fresh and non-stop refresh. So it's why we really need to add something new in the collection. Just to continue with you with the trends very shortly, the global trend is one thing, but what we have to do also with the trends, we need to adapt the trends according to the brand identity of the brand itself, but also we need to add, it's a recipe, yes, of course, but the brand has to know where they want to go. And according to the line they want to follow, they can select the trends they want to develop according to what they want to tell to their customers. And when you know that a little bit more clearly, it will be easier to prepare the new collection, and in that way it will be easier to implement something new every 2 weeks, for instance, or 3 weeks, or once a month. So the changes is made according, to sum up a little bit, according to the brand identity of the brand, but also the way you are translating the global trends into the local trends.
Thank you, Agnes. I think that helps us. The trends are looked in a certain way, where we were discussing about how the approach is being done, that new ideas have to happen, but there's a lot of thought has to be given then where you are in the local markets and what needs to be positioned and how frequently also it needs to be changed in terms of adopting trends also and bringing in new ideas also. And you were talking about, also it'll be good to know that how do you see the retail format environment to bring in the new products and ideas also onto the retail?
Correct. So basically you have 3 factors which you have to consider when you really want to play your game, and that's, the first thing is your brand, the second thing is your consumer, and the third one is your retail environment. So if we look at global trends, you need to ask yourself, what of this can I pick up for the market that I operate in? How relevant is that? And how much of this is my consumer going to pick up from that? We see a lot of trends from around the world, and Japan is different from China, is different from Germany, is different from India, and what they pick up from global trends may be something completely different. And I think that's where you need to see how well do I know my consumer, and what of these global trends do I need to convert into my local market. So it's also about the brand that you are. What kind of a brand value do you have internationally, locally? Like if I speak about Triumph, for example, we are 130 years old. And if we wouldn't go with trends, and if we wouldn't go with consumer needs at the same time, we wouldn't be where we are today. One of the leading lingerie companies globally. But we have to find that formula that works for the market. Now, if I look at India, for example, and we had this discussion before, India is a vast country. It shouldn't be just one country. It's actually a couple of countries in one. So there are different consumer trends within India itself. So that makes it very difficult also to operate in. So if we look at global trends, and we have a trends team globally that looks into this and then gives on the impulses to the local markets, then it is up to us to decide what do we do out of it. But we need to see the consumer. And what we do, for example, and that's a strategy that has worked extremely well for us, is that we look at what is working globally best, the reasons why it's working, and then what are the reasons why it could work or not work for us in India. And that's actually the success formula that has given us the positioning of being one of the top premium lingerie brands in India today. But like you said, the retail structure is also extremely important. So we have trends that change every couple of weeks. The question is India on that same level? Can you actually adapt it that frequently in India as well? And that comes from the retail structure. So if you look at own retail, you look boutique stores and all, you have it more or less under your own control. What you want to do out of it, how fast you're driving it. If you look at the wholesale structure, you're more dependent on your partners and how well they are prepped and how their back end is prepped for that. And that may just change the parameters of your game a little bit, where you need to consider, okay, how fast do I really go? Yeah.
No, thank you very much. I think it bits of understanding what we were talking about, the trends coming in, and then how you are looking at the trends and how you're adopting it and locally deciding what's relevant and picking up the right things and doing it what's relevant for your consumer, what you're hearing from the market, and also what the retail environment is supporting you also in terms of bringing those new products and ideas. So, Sudhir, I'll just move on to you, but from a point that, we talk about new products. We know it's easy for someone to say in a room saying that I want new products coming out every week. We were talking about the supply chain related issues. There's a way how the supply chain has been designed, or it's the way how we have worked with the supply chain in the past that the system has got used to it into that way. So what do you think the change can happen where you can actually move faster, where your organization desires to bring new products and you want to do that? And how do you think that can happen really? What's the sort of major change, one major change you think can happen which can support that system to bring new products faster into the retail environment?
Yeah, sure. Sure, all the trends, inspirations. Having done that, there is a particular timeline for developing of the designs, what she was talking about, and then making the actual samples and going into the bulk order production. Now, if you are talking about having a quick response or having those monthly collections, there has to be a sea change in the whole thought process. The strategy has to be totally changed. And it's not difficult that way, but it's not so easy as well in our kind of conditions. There are though live examples like brands like Zara, who does near about 12 to 14 collections in a year. There are brands like Hugo Boss, who does near about 8 collections, and so is H&M. But they are doing that and able to achieve that with a kind of backup which they've created strategically, and they are following it rightly. So in case of Indian brands, even we being Will's Lifestyle or John Players as the brands, we also follow the similar 6 months to 8 months kind of cycle, and wherein having a collection or response to the fast changing trends becomes very difficult. So what we have done, one change is that instead of making the full collection 8 months before and doing it together, what we try to do is phasing out the collections into the monthly kind of offerings. So you have some time, like it takes 6 to 8 months, but you start with 30-40% of the collection in the beginning. You got another 2 months later, you start with remaining 20%. You start another 2 months later for the balance 20-25% of the collection. Now, in WGSN also 1 year before you will be having some trends. It's like a kind of bouquet of raw materials. But this bouquet of raw materials also keeps on changing in the due course till the season comes. If we talk of spring summer 17, there is something already on WGSN. You pick up something. 3 months later, there will be something new edition coming, which will be much more pertinent. So what we have started working is on the pertinent fashion rather than just working on the fashion. So one is the differential collections getting designed and manufactured. Second is we're also working on some kind of concepts wherein during the season itself, why we can't do a manufacturing or a supply and offering to the consumers just within, say, a month's time or 2 months' time. Though the project, we are just working on this project, but the main challenge being over there is the supply chain issues. In case of Zara, for example, most of us are aware that they take a position 6 months back on the key fabrics. There might be 10, 20 or 30 fabrics on the structures, etc. They keep the fabric ready for dyeing or for printing. As soon as the new trend or color they pick up, trend might not be necessarily on the silhouette or style, it might be on the color driven or print driven as well. So as they pick up that, within 2 weeks they churn out the fabric, and the manufacturing facilities, I think nearly 40 facilities they will be having near to their own office, near to this fabric mill. Every week they are churning out hundreds of styles. So that's what they have built. So what we are also working on, we have a facility of ours which works on the Toyota sewing system. So which is not so bulk driven, wherein individual style can be taken out in a day's time as the output, rather than waiting for 2 to 3 days. So some kind of innovation, we have to just change the mindset, and some kind of innovation you keep on doing. But my take will be much more focus has to be on the supply chain side. Designing something closer to the season may be one of the easiest thing I'll say, because you've seen everything. Other brands are selling, it's a race, it's a fad. Now you have to convert into the actuality for your brand. You can't take as it is everything, so you have to tune that product, whatever key USP of that product or style is pertaining to your brand, and then back it up with a quick response or fast fashion kind of manufacturing and the delivery into the stores.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Sudhir. So I think you mentioned about it. So you're saying supply chain, but I think we don't have an answer. So we'll try and find an answer into this discussion. But just moving on to Mr. Kishore Bhatia, that when you're working with larger organizations, it's nice. You have so many product ideas sitting with you because everyone has a new product idea. And then you have a challenging job that you have to shortlist few, concentrate, deliver them, and you have to align everyone in the organization saying that that's our priority to make it happen on this season or the next season. So how do you think that approach works on making sure that everyone is aligned to bring those new products at a particular timeline, and it also focuses on the trends, what the market, the consumer is also looking for?
The key for the success, we can get the information regarding design and the color trend from the various trend forecasting magazines and the various sites. One has to know your customer in detail. So certain trends has to be modified as per the consumer requirement. So entire collection cannot be based on the trend. If you want to make a collection, it has to be divided into 3 parts. First part, depending on your historical performance, what has been the best seller, and what newness or tweaking can be done to make relevance to your business requirement present. Second is to create a new product or the features, value addition, which will give better value proposition to the consumer. Third product category will be absolutely trendsetter, new products where there is no demand for the market. And one has to invest in this type of product because these are the product for the futures. You will get a lot of new things, new ideas, new feedback from the trade, from your consumers. So depending on those altogether new concepts, we can modify, we can change, you can alter it and create and develop the product for the futures. So product development is the continuous exercise, and one has to keep always a focus at the global level, because being in India and in competing against each other will be at the same level only. Our objective should be the world-class innovation, and for that you need a different recipe. So you know exactly the trends, you know consumers, and what technology, what supply chain, what type of collaboration will bring a real change in your product offering. Because at the end, that is going to make a difference. Consumer is going to pay price to the product. You may sell the lifestyle. At the end, if the shirt is very colorful, different, but then that has to give the right performance and the right comfort, some value addition. So that is the key. So that's very, very important. Our focus is more on the value propositions, what we are offering to the consumer. And this value proposition will change depending on your consumer and the price point, what you're looking for, your target customers. So this is, I think, most important point. We focus here on that. And second, what you have done, you have separated one dedicated team for product innovation. So this team is absolutely not responsible for day-to-day business. So how many product develop, what is the newness, what is the change in design? No. Their job is to keep the product in pipeline, and always some product should be ready ahead of time. So it's a decision of the business head. So and particularly when we are at trend, your product will be successful only if you are right with the trend. If you are before trend, the product will not click. If you are after trend, you will be follower, it will not click. So one should know what is that right timing. And this right timing, you have to decide. That's the key. And depending on your brand, I will say brand positioning, in which business you are, what type of consumers they are willing to experiment. So you have to decide your boundaries and accordingly decide your development plan. I think that's simple. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vinish, I have this question for you since you lead product, finance, supply chain management, leading three things on the brand. Just imagine a scenario where there was a product idea given to your team to launch it, and someone decided in your team not to launch it, but there's a competition who launches the same product idea and makes it extremely successful. So one is, what's the reaction? Second is that, what is the sort of process on deciding that when you're actually trying to bring new products very frequently, there has to be a certain budget allocated from the finance to give them a free hand saying that, guys, you are open on this budget, this is the budget given to you, so that you can actually keep bringing new ideas into the value system very frequently. So one is the first reaction where you have a product, but you did not do it, but your competition launched it, very successful. So what do you do in that scenario?
So the answer to that is you feel lousy.
That's the worst part about it.
I think the most important thing is that when you come across a situation like that, and we do that all the time, I'm sure each one of us have had decades of experience working in our respective organizations. We have faced such situations. I think the learning that we get out of that is very important. There are a lot of cases where we have taken more than required time to launch a product. We believed in it, but we were not sure to commit ourselves. There's a difference between the two. If you don't commit yourself in business, and if you don't take a chance, you're not in line with change. You will get left behind. And like Kishorji said, that timing is critical, not only in business, but also in life. How you time yourself, you could have the most wonderful idea, and it could be an idea which could be probably 2, 3, 5 years ahead of its time. But if you bring it ahead of its time, you will lose. If you bring it 2 months after it is supposed to come, you will lose. Timing is critical. Coming to your second part, and somewhere we touched upon supply chain and finance, and of course we've been talking about the trend. I think every single function plays a role in making sure that whatever that idea that comes up is a success. It's not only the people who design the products who are responsible for the success or failure of a product. It's not only the operations who are responsible for making it a success or failure. In most organizations, when the business is good, we congratulate the sales team. I don't know whether it's ignorance or whether it is intentional. We forget the other departments, not realizing that it's not a single bogie train. It's a train which has many bogies, and each one contributes. And there is a locomotive which is pulling it forward. And it's something which has to be done by everybody collectively. You could have the best design team, you could have the best sales team, the two ends of the business spectrum. But if you have a lousy supply chain department, I can guarantee you failure. Okay? I remember when I started to work many years back, they used to say that if you have a good product, you can sell it from a lousy store. If you have a lousy product, you can't even sell it in heaven. And that is a fact. We all live in changing times. Change is inevitable. As business leaders, what we need to adapt is to ensure that what degree of change we make, we are getting inputs, we are getting signals, we are getting all sorts of insights regarding the consumer, regarding the competition, regarding what is happening in different parts of the world, and it's coming to us every minute, particularly with the growth in the information technology. It is changing so fast. Today, if I want to see what's happening in any part of the world, is just a click of a button away. How much of it to adapt is the key to success of any business. I can change a season. Every season I can change the collection. I can do what, typically when we have our business discussions, we talk about newness. We need to have new merchandise come into our business, and that's what we will offer to our consumers. I know, but newness is important, but how much of newness is important, because there is a cost to it. There is a cost of development of new products, and there is a bigger cost of liquidating whatever is in the pipeline. You also have to get rid of the rubbish at the end of the day, because we have finite resources. We do not have unlimited resources. And most companies lose out when they do not strike the correct balance between the two. There is no right or wrong formula. Okay? In case of Zara, if they are doing 8 or 10 collections every year, they are making sure that the new collection that comes in, when it comes in, the timing is so good that they will have the least amount. At least theoretically, somebody is working it out, that there would be a least amount of the previous season collection left with them, which they will be happy to offer it at a discount and liquidate it. But there is a cost to it. So that is your finance part of it. The supply chain plays such a critical role in each of these organizations. And supply chain is not necessarily somebody who manages the warehouse and somebody who looks after the transport department. Supply chain department's number one role is to make sure that the front end gets the merchandise, not by the day, but by the hour. If they have asked for the merchandise to be delivered at 11 o'clock, it should be there for sale at 11 o'clock. That is what decides. Change, at the end of the day, I would say, change is there. It is inevitable. It will continue to change. And in times to come, with the advent of technology, with the way the world is changing, we are no longer living in India. We are actually global consumers. We are actually global citizens. We don't give examples of my neighborhood store when I'm mapping competition. I give example of what is happening in the streets of New York, and I give examples of Milan, and somebody talks about what is happening in Singapore and Dubai. It's not necessary that every single week we go out to these places. We are getting so much information. We are getting an overload of information. And when you get this information, the most critical thing that we have to remember is how much and to what degree do we take and adopt. If you attempt to do all of it, promise you, we will not succeed. We will not succeed. It's a question of balance. Get the balance right. Each department is important. Every single change that is happening, many people look at it like a challenge. Every challenge is an opportunity. If things don't change, we don't have a future. Because it's changing, that's why the consumers keep coming back to us. Otherwise, everybody has enough clothes and enough shoes and enough food and enough of everything to take care of their basic needs. We should be happy that changes are happening, also in the fashion world. Fashion world is a very small part of the overall lives that we live. It's very, very small. Fashion could be in the form of styling, the aesthetics. Fashion could be in the form of colors. Fashion could be in the form of new products that come in, new uses. I'm sure there are so many products a year or two from now we would be using and would not be able to live without, which we can't even think of today. As a matter of fact, most of the designers who are taught on the basis of what has succeeded in the past, I think it's the most wrong thing to teach them. What you are doing is actually setting their mind, putting boundaries in their mind. A designer, somebody who's creative, should be allowed to think aloud, truly allowed. He should be allowed to come up with things like, I saw a few years back, somebody came up with something called a stitchless shirts, fuse shirts. There should be, probably sounds crazy, but there should be probably wear a shirt just once and throw it away. We should be moving in that direction. Footwear, same way. Okay, why should we keep a pair of footwears for 3 years and 5 years? Today, materials are so good that I can guarantee you that if I use that material, your shoe will not go away anywhere for the rest of your life. But do we want to make that shoe? Yes, it exists. There are products like that. There are materials like that. Do we want to make it? No, we don't want to make it. Because if we do that, what next? So we need to be ready with the next. And if we are going to do something on the design front, if we are going to do something on the fashion front, if we want to constantly evolve, if we wish to create the excitement and give more than enough reasons to our consumers to keep coming back to our stores, we need to keep offering what I call change. Every time a guy comes into our store, every time a guy connects with our brand, every time a guy uses our product, he should be able to see change. If that's not happening, it's not good for us. So change is a big opportunity in the fashion space. What degree of change is very different amongst the 10 of us who are sitting around this table. And there is no right or wrong formula. But when we change, we have to ensure that every single component of business changes and not one or two changes. Because if the ones that don't change will just hold everything back. Like I say, that the chain is as strong as its weakest link. So that example of your supply chain, your answer on the finance guy has to provide. If you're not earning enough margins, and if you keep talking about changes, it's a sure shot bankruptcy. Because you're not earning money, and you're asking to invest more, you will go bankrupt.
So I take your opinion, but I'm not completely agreed with some part of that, especially the last part, the finance part. So I'll move on to the next. That's the way I'm going to get Nihal into perspective. Basically, two things we talked about. He just mentioned, letting the design go very open, doing things which are not very conventional. It's something we were talking about, the approach to certain categories, like simple things like workwear, it's just be doing this, just be doing that, but the approach is very open, especially when you're on the online space. The expectations is that how different, what experience can be delivered, and especially the way how the new product ideas are communicated are much, much more different than what a retailer or an offline retailer would do. So what's your thought on this? And, talking about the whole perspective of doing things in a very, very open spectrum, trying to do something very unique on new products and ideas, and using the global trend ideas which you keep getting them regularly every season.
Right. And what we're sort of referring here essentially is the refresh, right? I think you do need refresh, but you don't change trends in 2 weeks, right? So the idea is that, so I think, so going back to purely from a design point of view, right? So how much more are you able to see into future? And there'll always be some bit of a gut element, right? But how we sort of work, especially in Myntra, is that so you have a part of the line, right? And you look at the collection saying that there'll be some part of it which will always be retained. There'll always be something which will be literally like a refresh. A part of the line will always be create, and part of it will actually be invent, right? Your focus has to be just proportionally different, right? So you need to good about 50% of your time needs to be invested in inventing, a balance about 30 to get into more into create, 20 in terms of refreshing, and literally nothing in retaining, right? It's just a carry forward. So that's where the focus is, right? And then I think what is important is that, so while the new trends are important, I think I think that's where the strength of the company is also that we're very, very agile, right? Very entrepreneur in its nature, sort of, and everybody drives, right, a point of view. What is important is that while you have the trends put out to the consumer, there are also many engagement platforms. For example, we have a a specific platform which is called Style Forum, right? That tells consumer, engages with them in terms of how to wear, what to wear, right? How many more different looks can you create from the same ensemble that you have, right? So different ways of even sort of interpreting what you generally otherwise see even in offline or on online as well, right? So I think there are many more ways to sort of engage with consumer to tell them what will be, how can you personalize the new trend that is coming up, versus sort of saying that this is the new trend and wear it the way we sort of showing it to you, right? So that's really I think, to me, I think what is important is that, so there are the things like, for example, I probably would, take a bet on something and lose that battle versus not being in it at all, right? So, and that's where I think that's really important, critical for a design point of view, that you need to, so that this is where the gut comes in, right? And this is where design should be able to see in future and saying what probably would be next for you, right? And at that point in time where the invent comes, right? And which is where you want to put your most of focus behind. But there'll always be some wins, there'll always be few failures. But the point is that if you're not constantly trying to change the things, to create and invent new, you'll become stale, right? So people won't even see you what you wanted them to see you as. That's literally, I mean, that's really the trick is, right? And I think just have a little more trust, I think, in yourself, in design, and in ability to sort of go ahead and take some more risk. And more than that, I think it's also equally important that how well do we engage with consumer. Right? I think don't let it be for, so I think instead of dictating them what probably would be the next, I think involve them, engage with them for them to sort of find their own new cool versus dictating them or sort of teaching them or preaching them.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Varun, from your side, with the experience on the accessories, it's pretty challenging, the way how accessories evolve, because many times we end up buying accessories a lot in the local market and we compare them with some of the stuff which is imported at a certain price points. So how do you make sure that the products which are being bought on retail, how do you make sure the trends are evaluated? And the same question which we were started off with, that it's locally relevant, because what you're buying in is being designed for a global market, but you're being very careful on selecting it. So how does that process work, and how successful you have been?
At Torero, we focus on designing in India, make in India, and supply from India. So when we design a particular collection, so we take into consideration the markets where we are focusing on, and also the functionality of the product. For example, last year, we had designed a smart wallet. So for which across Grabado Tech Plus wallet, so we won the Red Dot Design Award for that product. That product was way ahead of its time. So the sales did not happen that much, but the product was appreciated everywhere, but the consumer acceptance was not there. So there was a learning for us. Then this year again, we have won another Red Dot Design Award for a cross origami collapsible handbag. We have recently launched. So it is a very functional bag, which gets folded and you can carry it like a piece of paper, just like this. So again, we have received a lot of appreciation for these products, and we are the only Indian company to have won Red Dot Design Award twice in the history of Red Dot Design Award. So, and when it comes to functionality, while designing a product, Indian market is very different from international market in the sense when we talk about wallets. So a coin wallet is the preferred kind of wallet in India, whereas in Europe or in US, a credit card wallet is the preferred one. So if we design a collection based on a global level, thinking that it will work in all the markets equally, so it will not happen. So whenever we design, we know a certain kind of products, this is much more appropriate for India, and this is much more appropriate for UK, Europe, or maybe even Japan. So whenever we are designing, what I feel is when we talk about historical data, some products work, some don't. So we reject the products that don't work on the basis that it did not work in the past. But we never realize that future is not same as the past. So like sometimes what we do, like although the product has not worked in India, but we continue similar kind of product in a different design, and we have seen success. Because like at times the consumer preference changes, and we have started living with the fact that change is the only constant. So yeah, like and especially like at Toyero, like when we are having different brands like Cross, Police, Cosmopolitan, so we cannot go with a fixed mindset for all the brands. So yeah, like it's very challenging because the Indian consumers now the exposure to Indian consumers is much more when compared to previous years. So they want branded products at accessible price points, and there is a shift like from unorganized market to the organized market in terms of leather accessories. So yeah, we are very happy like with the response that we are getting on, also with the kind of designing awards that we are winning, and obviously like we want to take the concept of make in India and also promote design in India as well.
That's great, Varun. So I think that's good. So when you just mentioned about two products, you said they were recognized, there was an award, but the consumer did not react
Like
to it in terms of the sales.
One product like we had launched last year and it won Red Dot Design Award, but the consumer acceptance was not there because it was a tracker wallet, wherein like the wallet gets synced to a mobile app, and you can track your wallet if you lose it. So it was a smart wallet. But yes, like in India, like the acceptance was not there.
And when do you think, is there some thought process that when is the market, if it's not ready this year, like because there's a lot of trend people sitting here in terms of where they keep talking about wearable technologies as the biggest trend everywhere. So it's interesting that a trend company saying that the trend is towards wearable, you have a product which is sitting ready, it goes into the retail, you don't get the best response to that, but you win an award for that.
Yes.
But your finance people are not very happy because you've not made money out of it. So, and the product value chain says that I'm constantly working products for you, but you're not able to sell it.
Yes.
So, so the whole value chain is moving, the designers are working on it, everything is moving along in the whole value chain. So what do you do with that? What do you stop it? What do you do with that
No,
when
we
it happens like
don't
this?
We don't stop in the sense like.
When do you, how do you reevaluate that product to take it into the market?
We are evaluating like the reasons for the failure, and maybe like we can come up with reasons like since it has got a lithium battery, so like a lot of airlines have declined to carry and supply those products to international markets because there is some safety hazard to airplanes because of that lithium battery.
Okay.
So that was one drawback that we had faced. Another is like maybe like we failed to communicate the consumers much more about the functionality of the product.
And I think that's what I was going to ask Nehal also, that because they have to do much more active. And I think he also, Mr. Kishore Bhatti also mentioned about the communication, that how are you actually communicating about the products, because it's interesting to develop a new product, get excited, and you get very excited talking a lot of technically about the products. And sometimes the technical team wants to communicate it also too technically to the consumers, which is actually very irrelevant for the consumer because he's not interested in understanding your technical knowledge about the product. He's interested in understanding what's the value and benefit which comes across. So there's some of the things which is done too technical on the footwear, too technical done on the suit fabrics. So question is, Nehal, I think that's what I was going to ask you also, that how do you make sure that the right communication is happening for that new product? Because you do more communication online, which probably the offline guys have never been so motivated to do it, but of course they've been doing now because they have strict competition from the online guys. But how do you make sure that the technical feature of the product is understood in the right way? Or how do you decide where to stop and what are the features which should get highlighted very well?
I think, so before communication, I think it all starts from consumer, right? And any of these ideas that you sort of start working on has to start from a consumer need, right? And if you identified that, I think you go back to validate that piece with that set of consumer, right? What we really, really strongly believe in that consumer is really the final, the guy who's taking the final call, right? For any product that you innovate, right? It's important to have that set of consumer panel built in for each of the brand that you work with, right? And there has to be a loyalist, and there has to be people who do not buy into your brand for right or wrong reasons, right? So then I think what is important is that as you sort of come up with the idea, it's equally important for you to validate that and see what needs to work. And I think live that product. Well, a lot of it happens in the sense that you sort of come to a great innovative product and you feel like it's all going to be like great, but live that product for a while, right? Because you're going to make certain change and there's going to be a drastic change, right? You've not seen like a smart wallet, right? What about living that wallet for about 6 months or 3 months to see what it does to you? And really live that life with the consumer and let come back with more in terms of, but just purely in terms of after you've gone out, I think the engagement, as I'm saying, so I think engagement is really, really important and key to success. And how you sort of communicate that, there are many, many different ways, right? But I think, I think the marketing has to work the way out. But more importantly, I think everything else falls in place as long as you have the sort of a sign off from the boss, right? Saying that, yes, it works for me, right? This you designed for me, it seems like it's going to work. And I think, and there are many of such products which been sort of leading in some sense and have been very, very successful because they came from consumer insight and consumers did validate that. So like, for example, going back to like a project that Levi's had done, which was Curve ID about some 6 years back. But that meant for them scanning 50,000 bodies across the world. Right, that meant like they went to every single market before they actually launched that product to test it with the consumer that it worked or not. And then they obviously a fab job on communicating that too. But I think it's just, I think both of this is equally important.
So, Jennifer, just to, sorry, you want to say something? Sorry, yeah?
Yes, depending on the same, I want to share some certain information. It's like co-creating a product or the concept. So involve all the concerned member in that and create what is exactly required. I will share one example. Recently, we have launched one very intelligent fabric that is Techno Smart. As the name suggests, is for techno-savvy people, and all features are there. Whether nowadays travel is very common. Morning you are in London, and afternoon you are maybe in Dubai or somewhere else. So climatic conditions will be different, and you are wearing the same suit. So how to bring those properties in a suit where we can use the same suit into different conditions without compromising on the comfort, performance, and the what is value addition. So we were discussing with our advertising team. So how we brought these features in the fabric? One is through UV light reflection, so it gives the comfort. Number 2, through moisture management, so evaporation and giving the comfort. Third is wrinkle-free feature by adding certain different type of yarns and the different type of finish to the fabric. And generally when you see any high twist fabric or the wrinkle-free fabric, it is harsh in the handle. So we worked on that because we had a very bad experience with the launch of Cool Plus. Cool Max, Cool Plus, that concept. It has got a very fantastic property. It is very, very effective in the moisture management. So what happens, that fiber becomes, and the fabric becomes dry. So due to this dryness, we couldn't able to sell the fabric. So we didn't want it to have the same problem in the new development. So we came out with the different type of chemical compositions which brought the comfort, smoothness, and the silky sheen. So all the required product features were there in the product. And we went to the advertising team. Now you advertise it. What is required? The moisture management. So moisture management, what we can write? UV light reflection. Now we have to see consumer perspective. What is the right name for giving this information? So at the end, we came out with at the end, it is the consumer delight. So what he is looking for? As the travel, comfort, and easy accessibility. That's how it is decided, and it had clicked very well. And recently we got about order of 35 crores, and we are targeting 100 crores in 1 year's time. So that is what we are investing. And one more important thing what we learn is to bring everyone in the same boat. I'm telling you, in our textile business, the lead time is 120 days. Okay. So to start with the new fiber, spinning, weaving, finishing, or if you add everything, and if you place the order, it will be 120 days. We wanted to launch this product in 60 days time. So everyone has to aligned to this launch. And let me tell you, all the stakeholders were brought under one roof, we discussed, and the team has delivered the fabric in 55 days' time. Teamwork. So it's alignment. Everyone has to be aligned. Then only we can make a difference. He rightly said, the success of supply chain is very, very important. You may have the great product, but if you are able to deliver after the season, it is bound to failure. So we have to recognize the contribution of each and every member of the team to make it successful. I think that's the point. Thanks.
I think that's a valid point, and that's the reason if you observe, a lot of trend companies today are working with the supply chain well in advance. The trend companies today are working with the fiber companies, the fabric companies, so that when the products are actually showcased in a partnership with the company, so that for you to take that direction faster forward is much more easier. Rather than just showing you the colors and sketches, it comes with an actual sample, and it can be seen like how Woolmark was just showing here the SS17 ideas. So, Jennifer, my question to you was that we're talking about new products, new ideas. Well, look at innerwear as a space. Innerwear had certain approach in the market and the industry, but Triumph brought in a new approach in terms of how the products can be priced, how value can be added to the products, which the consumer can relate to it. And so what's been the biggest learning for Triumph in this country? Because what I can also understand that when the collection is done for Triumph globally, there are certain products which are designed through trends and ideas which get sold very well in India, and I'm sure they must be relating to some other countries also, which you would have observed. It's not necessary that what sells in India doesn't sell anywhere else globally also. So what's been your learning out of that on the new products?
That's correct what you're saying. For us, it's been a really interesting journey actually in India. So when we started here 15 years ago, we came from more mature markets. And we've taken their learnings and tried to incorporate them in India. And I wouldn't say we failed, but we reached certain barriers in how far we could go. And like I said earlier, you need to know your consumer. And that's what we really started to do in depth to get to the wisdom that we have today. I think there's one decisive factor. Now, as the discussion went along, I wrote down a few things. Like we spoke about timing, cost, balance, trends, flexibility and all. But I think it also boils down in what is your identity? What do you want your identity to be like, And this is the question that we had to answer ourselves also for India. So one of the learnings has been like when we entered, the lingerie market was in a very nascent stage. And to some extent still is today if we compare it to international standards. So the education of the consumer is very low comparatively. Now, you want to bring in great products, and they just don't work to that extent because the understanding of the consumer for that product is not there. Like you also rightly said, for your wallet, and the communication part has to be there then. So we had to, at some point, ask ourselves, we're celebrating 130 years, and when you look at our consumers worldwide, something that you get to hear from any woman who's a Triumph consumer is that she appreciates the quality that we stand for. Now, that same quality that we brought into India and didn't initially get that same acceptance and that same appreciation because the consumer didn't know actually what is good quality. Like what we had to fight for in India is to say, your bra stitching is not going to come apart after a couple of weeks of wearing or 6 months of wearing. Your colors are not going to wash out, after so and so many washes. And these are still, to some extent, perceptions that are prevailing in India today, and where we still have to educate and where we have to make the consumer understand of what is she paying the premium really for to appreciate the product that she actually gets. So that's being one aspect for when we speak about lingerie in India. And the other thing is that when we speak about trends and when we speak about fashion, how much of a fashion player do you want to be, and how much do you give into, and how important really is it for your brand in that moment? We have to go with outerwear fashion very clearly. The kind of colors that you have, the consumer wants to see also in her innerwear, you know. But then it comes to, like, I give you a very classic example when we speak about push-ups, for example. You know, like we had this discussion with our head office a couple of years ago, and they said, how come India is the only country in the world where we are in that really doesn't sell push-ups? And we said, because the Indian consumer doesn't like it. How can that be? She's a woman after all. And it's a discussion that we had again and again, and it's not like push-ups aren't really selling, but the Indian consumer or the Indian woman doesn't really want to show cleavage, unlike other women abroad. It's not that important for her, but the shaping around it and the way it makes her feel, that's a different aspect. And when you understand that, then you can incorporate these elements from abroad and put that forward into your local strategy. And that made really the difference, that we have to understand that thinking. We have global designs. And we examine them and what has worked, what has not worked. And sometimes it's just a matter of increasing the coverage of a bra by a few, maybe half a centimeter, 1 centimeter, you know, to give that coverage that the Indian woman prefers, maybe in contrast to a German woman or an American woman, you know. So these are small, tiny little differences which we had to really understand. And when you are an international brand and you enter a market, you know, you come with a certain understanding and you think you know these kind of facts. And of course you do your market research and you study before you enter a country, but small details like these, nothing prepares you really for that. This is something that you can really only experience once you enter, once you start operating, once you experience, once you get the feedback, and very, very importantly, collect that feedback. You need to build in-house expertise. You need to build in-house analysis and constant review that allows you to build on that. Otherwise, you will just jump from one thing to the other. And I think that made the difference for us.
Yeah, I think good. So what you've done is, you know, the Triumph history is pretty long, if you look at the whole history. So in that whole history, the new products keep coming in, the trends are looked at in season on season. So there's an archive of information coming on the products and ideas, which every season the trend companies like Agnes, Anupreet are building on. And there are learnings available on the products, like he was talking about one of the products, he was talking about the products where the products come in, sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail. So question is sometimes a lot of this, and that's something for us to look at, that how a Triumph, like a global company, builds the archive pretty strong on their learnings through different regions. Are we ready? You know, I know it's very easy every time. I don't like that example we talk about Zara, very conveniently to say Zara does this, Zara does that. But question is that Zara is doing some simple things, which are like basic common sense. And I think we all know it, and I'm surprised that we all know it. It's easy talking about it rather implementing about it. And it's a different business model they follow, but coming to the point that the archive of trends and ideas in terms of timing and the relevance to the market, which you were talking about, when the consumer is ready to take it, are we sort of as the India mentioned, you know, there's a timing, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, you know, there are different things. But is the archive strong enough to look into that information, what worked and what did not work? Sometimes it's very convenient to even look at your competitor's archive, you know, because you don't have to waste your time. Your competitor would have done a lot of learnings. You don't have to waste your time. But in India, somehow I've seen some of the approach, oh, my competitor has launched it, I never want to do that product because I don't want to look doing the same thing. But you're being foolish because he's done that product, he's given the learning to you on your table to take that learning across in a very convenient way and just do a better modification on that product and make your product much more faster, as you were saying, from 120 to 60 days. So it's not necessary everyone has to do the same learning for 120 days. Rather, you can make your learning very short. So just to close this last point, which actually I wanted to ask both of you also from a global trend perspective, that on this forum, I've been attending this forum, every time this point gets discussed about trends, new products and ideas. But one of the thought is that, you know, we travel abroad, we see trends which are very consistent across all brands and retailers in terms of colors. In India, we talked about India is multiple countries, a mix of it. But the reality is the way how Nihal would agree that the way online information is flowing across on trends and ideas, it's going to change. And that's what he talked about. We have to change. it's not that we cannot say that India is not the same in terms of, so how do you think India would be adopting that much more common understanding on the trends? So if it's white as a color, then how white gets reflected in a very, across the brands and retailers, rather than someone saying, no, I don't believe white, it's black, just because one of the product manager in that company doesn't like white at all.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And, while we are really wanting to emphasize that, let's run after that change and let's go after that change. Yes, change is impeccable and it's important, but is there a point that, we have realized that, for example, when, we talk about Nihal and Levi's comes to mind, and we do realize that Levi's is also like a really, really old company, and when at a certain point in time we say that a trend changes, it could change to something which is towards a more technological, variety. But it could also go back in time. We know that retro trends were really very, very popular, and we saw that people wanted to wear archive vintage denim. People wanted to have vintage replicas. So let's also not forget the fact that while change is important, but at the same time there is always the sense of how we are looking forward. What is our lifestyle? What are we thinking? And all that put together makes you understand what the consumer really wants. Because to give example of, why is it for a fact that, the fabric that you manufactured and it's a huge success. And why is it something that, of course there are technical glitches on the wallet that you're working and you would be working forward with. But at the same time, what provoked you to do a technically advanced fabric, and what provoked you to do that technical wallet is also something that is coming as a derivative of trend. We being a trend agency not only want to tell you what colors, what silhouettes to follow, because that would be something which I'm sure your designers might be able to pick feelers as well. So we would say that that is one aspect of trend. That's a very superficial aspect of trend. Where we want to go is to actually deep down and deep dive and take you to that reality. That after all, when you were manufacturing fabrics from a classic perspective, why was that you wanted to bring in that technical angle? Why did that come to your head? So putting things in a perspective, yes, change is important, but it also kind of resonates with and echoes with the times that we are moving in. Are we moving so fast that there is a nostalgia for the past? And that's why we have this retro things coming forward. And like Sir had mentioned that, when we start changing, how quickly are we changing and where are we changing and when do we need to stop, or should we not stop at all? Because in the initial discussion when I was mentioning that if when telephones were manufactured and then if Graham Bell stopped making or innovating, then we would not be sitting with iPhones and our touch technologies. So while it's still important, but it's at the same time very important to understand your consumer psychology. And I think that Myntra guys, when they are interacting with their consumers and constantly, getting a feedback and trying to understand what is that consumer wanting to do. And when, Triumph is trying to actually try to understand that why is it that a certain product is working and not working. So it's the mood of the environment that you're selling in that you try to capture. At the end of the day, what we are trying here to do is to sell a good product, to excel in the businesses that we are in. And that's only going to happen if we can relate it back to our consumer. We can have excellent marketing, we can have excellent supply chain, excellent innovation. But at the end of the day, if it does not resonate with what the consumer wants, then we go back to the canvas and we decide, we try and go and say, why did that not happen? And that's where I would like to emphasize, the aspect of why we are there to help you with trends. And because, we want to set that background, that what is that Indian woman thinking? What is it that your consumer, your young consumer, what is their lifestyle going to be like? And with that knowledge, we want to arm you with that knowledge of experience, of product knowledge, and of course of color, silhouette knowledge, and then arm you with that knowledge, and then you move forward with the amount of change that you want to pursue with. I hope that answers. Yeah.
I think I sort of agree with you. And just to give you one example, like at Madura, the organization, we have this thing called Mission Happiness, where we are monitoring the trends on a daily basis. So the consumer trends, there's a trend room where there's no product display. There are only trends getting displayed. So consumer messages online are getting displayed. So people are just asked to come into that room and just look at what online people are typing. It's just giving a reflection of what they're thinking. So the designer and the product manager has to walk into that room, look at those messages, understand the trends and relate to it. This becomes so much easier and so faster for them to see what's happening on a thing. And also on the knowledge management, there has been a thought that there is a thing we believe on called Knowledge Management Center. So the idea is that season on season, you want to work on new ideas, you want to develop new products. But if your archive of information gets missed out somewhere, so you should be having trends, because the trends can be for every season to go back and look into. Like I was just talking to someone, I said, can I look at the spring-summer 16 trends to see how different it is from spring-summer 17? Because whenever I sit with someone, they just say, oh, it's not any different. It's looking so same, or it's looking very similar to spring-summer 15. And that's exactly what she was talking about, is just going back and looking back at some of your history of what has worked, what has not worked, and the trends are right across into you. And it's a consumer sentiment, I think, what she was talking about, I think what referring to, for us to refer back. So do we have time, or we're done with the time, right? So, but I just want to thank all of you. I think it was, we discussed much different things before our session. We went into a different space, but that was good because there was no point in discussing the same thing again in a group of us. But just to sort of summarize some of the key thoughts, I think what we all mentioned about, I think Nihal talked about on the designs being taken to a different perspective, which is more relevant to the consumer, and communicating, which is much more effective online, what you were talking about. And Anupreet, you were talking about how the trends can be looked at on a global platform, but being smart enough to pick what is relevant for your consumer. Like these are the ingredients, what you said. And Sir was talking about being more speed, and how you are being effective enough on your ideas and being within the boundaries of the brand, you do new innovations. And Mr. Bhatia was talking about how to reduce the time, like you have new ideas sitting on your table, but if your market demands it in 60 days, you rather do it in 60 days and not do the cycle of 120 days, which is a routine cycle. And I think Agnes had a perspective on the trends, again, with what Anupreet mentioned, that the global being adopted locally, which is much more relevant for your brand, rather than being just relating it to an international brand, not necessarily into that thing. I think Sudhir talked about on the supply chain effectiveness to bring in new products. And Varun was talking about you can fail and win awards, but you can continue that pipeline of the products. And I think Jennifer talked about learning from the experience, when you are coming in from a global perspective of the market, that how you bring in the products more relevant and keep the constant learning process so that your product value chain is constantly on. And I think, thank you very much to the whole group.
Excuse me,
Thank
any
you.
questions from the audience? Anybody would
Thank
like
you.
to ask to our esteemed panelists?
While you're thinking of the questions, I'll give you a small anecdote on the lighter note. I read this some 10 years back, that at the turn of the 20th century, that is 1900, the US Patent Office actually shut their office, saying that whatever had to be invented has got invented. And there is no more change that is likely to happen. This happened in 1900. And then between 1990 and 2000, the last 10 years, the last decade of the last millennium, there was more change than the previous 5,000 years. And actually, in the last 5 years, with the advent of the digitization, you can't live your life today without LinkedIn and Google and Yahoo and smartphones and internet. If anyone needs to take control of this world, all he needs to do is take control of the internet, and he's got you. So this is to tell you how much the world has changed and how much the world is likely to change in the next 5 years. It's going to be amazing. So get ready for the change, adopt it, embrace it, and use it like an opportunity rather than a challenge. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Myself Bhavika. I'm coming from Mahindra Retail. And my company is basically into, if you have heard about Mom and Me stores, now called as Baby OAs. So my question is actually very specific to my own brand. I handle women's product development for ethnic wear. The question is like, if we are moving more towards trend and the brand is more specific for the need-based functionality product, do we need to concentrate more on trends or functionality to provide customer? I mean, I'll specify it more. Like right now, the trend is of like straight cut Indian silhouettes and teamed with palazzos or pants. But my kind of, the customers, the consumers whom I am catering to is pregnant moms, nursing moms. So do I need to move to, because I don't feel I'm doing right if I'm moving to the straight silhouettes or something. So should I keep more percentage of trend in my planning or need-based functionality products?
Can I answer that question? So specific lines like that, which cater to a need basis, you probably have less of a fashion quotient which has to drive that category, because it's really basically and very specifically targeting on that need of a woman. Okay, so if you're saying nursing, now we have nursing bras. The functionality drives the product. You need that functionality in that moment. The fashion is secondary, probably. However, does that mean that an otherwise fashionable woman or a style-seeking woman, for example, wants to be completely unfashionable in that moment just because she has that need? I don't think so. So yes, fashion does play a role, but it has to be in combination with your functionality. So there you will have to find a compromise. You may find that classic products will always move and play a higher role. However, depending on what type of woman you're facing, okay, you also want to offer her something different. She doesn't want to wear the same thing every day, So maybe you don't have to have such a huge fashion quota, but keep a varying degree of that in that, so that you don't miss out on a portion of your target group actually and lose your market share in that.
Thank you, everybody.
Most welcome.
One more question.
Hi, I'm Priya and I'm from the WGS India office. So I have a question for all the brands in this panel. So I mean, all of you use, trend forecasting services. All of you travel a lot abroad. All of you understand what is, selling and what is trending overseas. But I see all the brands seem to have this hesitation, in India of trying out new things. I mean, new styles, new fabrics, new colors. Why is that? I mean, is it a supply chain challenge that you face, or is it that the consumer is confusing north versus south versus east or west? Or, do you think the consumer is not ready? I think the consumer in India is ready for a lot more. They are really, really, speeding up. They're way past what we would have thought they are. So what is the hesitation? Why don't we see the same styling? Why don't we see the same, the pace at which styles happen overseas?
Important is that some of those trends that we thought that we saw, because of the fact that we also were very, very long in the calendar, and that's completely changed after the entire event of the e-com business, because agility is really the key word there, right? But I think at the same time, I think many other brands as well, which are not only online, I think they sort of lapping up all of those, right? There are new learnings, and I think very soon you will see all of that happening in India as well. For example, like a platform like Myntra, right, also has the same line of Forever 21 that is available anywhere. today now competing with any other brand on the same platform, right? There's just no way that you can survive if you're not in trend with brands like that. Right, so it'll change for sure. I think, so just one more piece I want to sort of bring in here. I think, so we sort of brought in the complexity of the back-end supply chain. I think at the end of it is also for us to sort of shape how we want to shape a back-end. Right, it didn't come like that, right? It exists like that, but how do you want to shape it? And how do you want to really, get what you want to get out of it is up to you, right? So it's really the recipe is in our hands, right? We have everything available around it. The same system that, all of those companies that we named here also work with. How are they managing it, right? Versus we saying that supply is a big issue. I think it's just purely I think more importantly, I guess, I also feel I think we probably need to have a lot more control of the consumer. I think we do a lot less of it here. And hence that also sort of from some reason also sort of plays at the back of our mind saying that, are you confident to take that change? Right, and that then shows up in terms of how much can you take risk going forward in the future. And I think a lot of things, changing, purely, what is really changing also just the information. So much more information right now available in terms of what consumer wearing, not only wearing, trending, just what they think, right? How they sort of looking at their lifestyle, how they partied 5 years back, how they party now, right? What is really the coolest thing now is the hangout, right? You don't want to be dressed like for party to go to party, right? So those are the new things that are sort of coming up, right? It's a completely new set of information and very, very easily available now. I think that's going to change a lot of things as well. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be much longer before you probably would say no sort of a difference between, so it's going to be one common word, I guess, I feel like one small.
Yeah, I think we are really running out of.
Yeah, so I think that's what he summarized it pretty well. The consumer insights are pretty critical, but the reality from the timing is when you see a lot of the designers, actually I observe them, they actually go every season, shop garments from international stores, and they take that as inspiration, and I think that's what has to stop. Nihal knows it very well from his experience. So if that stops, and they just have to look at the global trends, I think that's it.
Thank you very much.